First of all, John, thanks for having me down here. I understand that you're a regular patron here.
I make it into the Marion Bad and Chocolate a lot. You know what? Jerry's a good guy. I've known him for a long time. And you know what? I think this building is a lot of what downtown's about.
Well, tell me what about that. Like, I mean, you've been down here for a long time. Why don't you give me a bit of background about you? I've known you for a little bit now, but maybe just for people who may not know, you can give me a little bit of background.
You know what? Born and raised in London. Grew up in Byron, but loved coming downtown. And back then, this is where the movie theaters were. This is where all the action was. So you came downtown, and I never lost that desire to want to come downtown. I love London because it's my home. But what I like about the downtown, it is the hustle and bustle of what the city is, and I think the downtown breathes what the city wants to be.
And so you've been in business here for a long time. How long have you been in business downtown?
We've been in business since 1974. I started with my dad in 1980, so I've been there since 1980.
And downtown the whole time?
No, actually, we started out in the south end of the city at Wellington and Commissioners. So we were there for 4 years, and then ended up in Blackfriars in 1984. We ended up in Blackfriars. We've been there ever since.
So you've been involved in a lot of different associations. You're obviously very active in the London Downtown Business Association, and so let me ask you this: what would be your vision for the downtown?
I think downtown needs to continue to grow. I think one of the challenges we have as a city is we seem to want to carry the baggage of a small town mentality. We're the 10th largest city in Canada. We are the largest urban center in southwestern Ontario. And I think there's times we have to act a little bit more like that. You know what? We need to take the lead role. I think other communities look to London to do that. So I think we need to step up and carry that leadership more proudly than we want to do it.
So let me talk about what council's done so far. I mean, they've made a number of investments downtown. They've made it a key part of the London plan. They've made it a key part of their proposed Shift BRT plan. It's obviously a centerpiece from their perspective. It's obviously something you care about, something I care about. So tell me what you think about where we are right now, what we would do better, what we would do differently.
I think the investments that we've seen in the downtown, and I'm going to use the market as a prime example. When we invested in the market, the return that we got on that was exceptional. When you look at where the market is today, as to what the expectation was when it started, it has far surpassed that. So when you look at things like BRT, and you talk to Bob Usher's concerned about what BRT is going to do to the market. He's concerned about access. He's concerned about deliveries and so on and so forth. And I understand where that concern comes from. I think for a lot of us in the downtown core, one of the challenges is BRT to us is a yellow line on a map of 2,500 feet. We don't get to see what the streets look like. And I think that's something that after the number of years that they've been preparing for this, it's something that we're missing. I think it's something that would bring a more comfortable feeling to the downtown, and I think that's why they're not getting buy-in. I also think one of the challenges we have is I'm very proud that downtown is unique here. When you're born and raised here, there's certain things that you buy into in the city. We are a very tight downtown. It's the way it was designed. It's the way it was designed 150 years ago. We don't have space on our streets downtown for dedicated BRT lanes, for cars, for bike lanes, for pedestrians.
We're trying to pack a lot into a very, very small area.
And I think we're challenged by that. And I think part of that comes from, as a lifelong Londoner, you respect what we have. I think when people come here, I think part of the challenge is they look at London and they say, but we can turn it into Kitchener. We can turn it into Hamilton. I don't need to be another Kitchener. I don't need to be another Hamilton. I always go back to when we did the figure skating championships and the city advertised us as the other London. I never liked that. No. We're the London in Ontario, and I think we should be proud of it.
The biggest thing I see when I look at the downtown, I guess, is around the investment side, John. I mean, I'm a believer in the Back to the River project, but not for the reasons I think people envision. They see this ribbon, this bridge to nowhere kind of thing. I don't view it as that. I view it as an opportunity to start bringing investment downtown and creating what I consider a centerpiece around the riverfront, around the Forks and the Thames. And I believe you start from there and then you build out. And I think the vision that I've seen articulated by organizations like the London Community Foundation, and I think the business association is very supportive as well, start to see that that could be a centerpiece that grows the downtown and becomes a very effective piece for development, for industry attraction, for urban attraction, for all kinds of different new businesses. And I look at Pittsburgh as a model, and I look at San Antonio as a model, and I look at San Diego as a model. And I look at these organizations and I see how they're using the riverfront as an asset, a strategic asset. And I'm a big believer in that. And I know it's an expensive investment, but usually those types of things are. And I am a supporter of Dundas Place, but you know, we talked about briefly before we started, we talked about, okay, that's great to get the hardware, but what's the software look like? And you had some comments around that.
Well, and I think that's exactly it. When you look at Bud Gardens in all intents and purposes is building. What's made it successful is the programming that's gone into Bud Gardens. It's the team that was put together to ensure that the concerts and such that are coming here are filling that space. And we've been very successful with that. When I look at Dundas Place at the end of the day is going to be a street. It's what are you going to do with that street to make it successful? And if you don't invest in that, it could be an investment that just falls flat. And that's not what you want. You want it to be lively. You want it to bring the things to downtown that you're wanting there. When you talk about the riverfront, I think the riverfront is something that we fall short on. I think it's something that we have to focus on. I walk across the river every day to go from where I live to where I work. Part of the challenge I see is that come August, in a dry summer, it's not a river anymore. It tends to be almost a creek that runs. And I think we have to deal with that. The other thing I think with Back to the River is, and I think we've got an excellent opportunity to develop it, is in Soho at the hospital lands.
I agree.
The hospital lands, to me, are an opportunity for this city.
And in fact, if you were to talk to the leadership of the London Community Foundation, the Soho opportunity is actually what they're after. The Back to the River is really about business development, economic development, and affordable housing. And people forget that. It's kind of morphed into a project that people perceive as some sort of aesthetically pleasing project. And that's fine. I think there's some attributes that can be attributed to that. But really, the nuts and bolts of this investment are really applicable to investing and developing the Soho market so that we can start to bring private sector dollars into there and rehabilitate that particular part of the community. I think those are huge opportunities. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, John, is you know, I live out in the suburbs, and I'm proud to say I do. I'm very happy we just moved into West London, and it's a beautiful part of the community. But one of the questions I have is there are some perceptions about downtown. I've written about these perceptions and some of the challenges down here. So maybe you can share with us what you think are some of the challenges, because I'll be candid with you. Sometimes I get denial around that. Sometimes I get people concerned about safety, about parking, about convenience, about accessibility. I think those are frustrations that are more perception than reality, but I still think that they are perceptions nonetheless. And so one of the things I think about as somebody who comes, as somebody who's looking to be a leader in the community, is how do we mitigate those perceptions once and for all, and actually allow the community to embrace the downtown in the manner that the retailers locally are doing so right now.
And I'm going to agree with you. I think perception is a huge issue in this city. I think we're challenged with it downtown every day. I have good friends that won't come downtown because they'll look right at me and they'll say, I'm fearful to come downtown. My wife and I walk the streets downtown all the time. It's not a fear. I think part of the challenge that we have in the downtown is our ability to work together cohesively as a unit. Business needs and wants certain things. And let's keep in mind that there are more business people working in the downtown than there are residents. We bring in almost 6 times as many business people every single day. The challenge becomes, how do we get them out of their buildings and walking the streets? But I think the perception around us working together, and I'll use a consumption site as a prime example. I think one of the things you and I would both agree on the consumption site is, in 2018, nobody should be dying in our streets. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But it's our ability to work together as a community to come up with a solution. And I think we're challenged with that because I'm finding right now the city is very adversarial on a lot of topics. But any topic that comes up, that in essence needs unity and needs agreement and needs a certain amount of give and take, we immediately get our backs up. We don't want to work with one another, so we don't end up with a solution to these problems. And I think we need them.
I think the struggle you mentioned around safe supervised consumption sites and what the city is trying to accomplish is that people qualify it as a NIMBY issue, and I don't believe it's a NIMBY issue. I think people are quite fearful of the consequences. This is a healthcare issue, and I completely understand that. But there is some downstream consequence with that, and there are some risks with that, and those risks are real, and they need to be respected. Sometimes I think there's this pushback, like somehow if we're not accommodating, then somehow we're evil, or we're not caring, and I find that problematic. I think the health unit is trying to do their best to try and find a way to accommodate and address this problem. I really believe that. I think they're going to have a hard time, and I think there's going to have to be some innovative solutions, what I call London-based solutions, that will work to make this happen. Because right now, I think this struggle to find a place is going to continue. And I think no matter where you decide to drop the address, once you do, you're going to run into pushback, because there is going to be this ancillary consequence. And I care about the businesses downtown. I really care about people like Arcane and companies who are putting dollars of investment in this community, private sector money, putting a lot of their skin in their own game, have a lot of employees, and they have a care. And I don't want to see us pit business against business. I think that's the wrong way to go. So I think we either find a location within the proximity of the community that's accessible, or we're going to have to find a different solution. But I honestly believe that there is a made-in-London solution that can work for everybody, so that we do not get to what you said, which is pitting people against each other, because it just creates the division which we need to mitigate.
I agree, and I think it's accepting, it goes back to what you were saying, I think it's accepting that moving forward with any sort of solution to the problem carries issues, and I think it's not a case of not discussing the issues. I think it's a delivery on how do we mitigate the problems that we're going to have as a community when we deal with them. Because I agree, I just don't see that you're not putting in a solution that's going to be perfect. You're putting in a solution that you are going to have to build on and you're going to have to work on a regular basis.
Right.
But how do you mitigate those issues for, as you say, for businesses and such that are in that area?
You could make the argument that a supervised consumption site would be as effective in Masonville or Byron as it would be downtown. There's a perception that this is where the consumer base is, and I think there is a fair bit, but it is a problem that is citywide. So to make a presumption that this is a downtown problem or an Old East Village problem or any other part of the city problem is a mistake, and that's why we have to figure out what I consider a citywide solution.
I would agree with you, and I think going even one step further on that, I think part of the challenge we're having in the city right now is we have many organizations that are dealing with addiction, that are dealing with mental health and such. I think when you look at addiction, one of the challenges we have is we need that frontline organization. We need an organization that you can deal with at City Hall on a regular basis. If they want to sub out to other organizations, that's not a bad thing. But there's an accountability piece here that we should have. And I think we always look at it, accountability to the taxpayer and accountability to others. It's not that, it's accountability to the individual. Those individuals deserve the best service possible that they can get. It shouldn't be organizations pitting against one another for dollars to do the exact same service. So I think ultimately we need to get that. We need to find that one piece, that one organization that says, I'll take on the responsibility of that and I can deal with that.
I agree with you. Let's switch gears for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about intensification. I'm a believer, as are you. I think that makes a lot of sense from a city perspective. I think the cost per kilometer to provide the services to the community obviously is much better than if it's stretched out over a significant geography. We have infrastructure challenges, as you well know, particularly in the downtown, because it is not robust enough, and it's old, but it's not robust enough to be able to accommodate the level of people and places that we're looking to place down here. So there's some work to be done there, clearly. And I think to the credit of the city staff and the engineering group, they've identified this, and they seem to be working on an appropriate plan. But one of the questions I have for you is, now we're into a battle between intensification, which is inward and upward, and heritage. And that seems to be something that's galvanizing neighborhoods and also creating some divisions in neighborhoods. And so you're kind of at ground zero for some of those debates. How do you feel about that?
One of the things I love about other cities is when you see the mixture. You get a mixture of old and new. You get a mixture of heritage properties, but you get a mixture of heritage properties in with new developments. I think that's what makes a streetscape exciting to walk through. So I would look at it from the perspective of, I think we have a couple of challenges. One is, we've surrounded our downtown with heritage districts, and we're continuing to do so. And so we have our downtown, which is a heritage district. We now have Wortley, we have Woodfield, we have Blackfriars. My understanding is North Talbot is applying for a heritage district. So I think we have to be a little careful on one thing. We don't want to use heritage districts to block intensification. That's not what they're meant to do. They're meant to recognize certain attributes of the neighborhood. And I think Woodfield's done that. I think, you know what? I think Woodfield's done a good job of that. But more to the point, I think we have to get to a point where we're finding a way to fund some of our heritage. Because we're choosing properties, we're choosing buildings, they're looking at the owner and they're saying the onus is on you to keep it up. The owner doesn't have the funds to keep it up. So what happens is our heritage disintegrates to nothing, to a point, and then ultimately gets torn down. So I think we need to be looking at creating some form of heritage fund that people can borrow to, interest-free,
Great idea.
put money into their systems.
Yeah.
I also think that the city, when they're doing that and they're looking out, I'm going to use one of the streetscapes that I love downtown is Richmond between Dundas and Queens on the east side, where David's is. Fabulous streetscape. You look up, somehow you've got guys that can get up there that, I don't know how they do it, but they can get up there and they can paint. And whether the city creates a system at to a cost to keep people off these roofs, so that when the heritage development and such goes in, and these buildings are restored, that they're respected through that process. But we need something. We need a solution more than just saying we wait until something is going to get torn down to decipher how important it is to us. If our heritage is that important, then we need to start to put our money where our mouth is. And you know what? Then you take an organization like Latch, give them the funds and say, you administer them, you deal with it, you help people through the process.
I think we need to start motivating developers to move their properties off just idle and having this deterioration occur. By the same token, however, we need to also be supportive of our builders. These are the people who are putting millions and millions of dollars of investment into our community. They are genuinely interested in building our community. Many of them have long-standing histories of not just employment, but investment and charity and contributions to the community. They're well respected in not just our community, but actually communities across the province. And they're doing more and more development outside of our community because of the frustrations around moving forward with this thing. So I think it's a give and take. I think we need to motivate, create consequences and motivations, and then we need to be cooperative and we need to look for opportunities. And if we have an official plan that says we're going to put a building in a certain area because we're looking for inward and upward, then we need to support that. Some councillors, to their credit, are true to the principles within that plan. Other councillors are true to those principles until it's in their backyard or their own ward. And that's the kind of frustration I see. And so when you're a developer, you're looking at this situation, you're saying, I can't make this palatable. I can't deal with the consequences and the hassle and the time and the stress. You're dealing with money that's being tied up. You're dealing with employment that's being frustrated. They're going to go where it's easier to do business. Capital goes where it's welcome. Capital goes where it's easy to do business. And from my perspective, we need to start making it easier. And you layer in all the other stuff we're doing around heritage, around environmental studies and all those things. I respect those processes, but they need to be mindful that the builder and the people that they're building these homes for or these residences for are clients. And that perspective sometimes gets lost, and the respect entitled to people who are bringing millions of dollars and creating jobs and wealth and homes and charity in our community need to be respected. And I'm really hopeful that whatever the new form of council looks like, that the consistency starts to show up. Because if you have councilors who talk a principle, but then fall through the NIMBY program, you're going to be in a situation where you will have these conflicts forever in a council, and it will send the wrong signals to everybody. And it creates the very divisions that you're talking about we need to start to repair.
I agree. I think, too, that when you look at these buildings, I've always been a firm believer that when you're looking at a basis of how we generate income as a city, you've got a couple ways to increase that. You're going to increase it through taxes, or you can increase it through growth. The developers in this city live here. They live here. They're part of our community.
Exactly.
I struggle to see builders in this city who are choosing to put up buildings and choosing to put up properties where people are looking at it and go, oh my God, that's a sorry looking building. They don't do it. And Auburn is a prime example. I think Auburn is trying extremely hard to please the people of Whitfield. There is no question. And I think in the reality, are we going to come up with a solution that works for them? I hope so. Because to me, having a building overlooking the park is a great opportunity for the city. I think it speaks volumes to the city. I don't see putting one building there is all of a sudden we're going to have people coming and knocking down homes around the park and saying, we've got one, now we want 10 more. But what a great vision and what a great look.
Well, it reminds me a lot of New York Central Park. I mean, in a miniature, and at some point it's going to happen. And I think we do our best to accommodate. We be respectful, but at some point it's going to happen. And the beauty of that is it's not like they're putting up some shady building. This is something that is actually going to increase property values across that whole area. And I think that, to your point, Auburn is very interested in preserving the heritage value and the intimacy of that neighborhood. But if every neighborhood is a heritage district and everybody has this kind of protectionist viewpoint, then we're violating our own official plan. So we say we're very supportive as long as everything's 6 stories. That's not going to work. And that kind of nirvana thinking is something that's going to be problematic if it persists. We need to start bringing some business acumen around the council. I'm not suggesting the whole thing needs to be dominated with business acumen, but a respect for private sector investment and for people who are putting their own skin in the game, and respect for the fact that they are building our community, building the community we envision for ourselves, has to be much more paramount and much more pronounced and much more respected around the council floor. And I, especially because we've had a good economic run, and there's no presumption that that's going to continue in infinitum. So I think we need to start working hard at that. And again, I don't believe it has to be everybody, but I think, you're thinking about running for council, and I think it's excellent because you bring some business acumen and you have a respect for the dollar and respect for the people who are putting skin in the game to create jobs and to build wealth in our economy.
I think that there's a perception out there from a lot of people that if you're a business person, you're not a compassionate person. And I think when you look at this city, and one of the things that I am so proud about in this city is that the business leaders in this city, and you know a lot of them, I know a lot of them, these are extremely compassionate, caring people. The city is what it is today. When you look at the fundraising dollars that are made in this city, when you look at the support in this city and how strong it is from our business leaders, Business Cares Food Drive, prime example. You think of how that started from two individuals to where that organization is today. And that speaks just to the business community and what they can do. I think when you speak of the economic piece, I think the economic boom has been here. I think it should have been stronger in London than it was. I think it was soft in London. And I think part of that is we don't have enough people working in London. And I think part of our challenge with having people working, we need to be focused on good jobs. There's no question. But I also think we have to be respectful of the fact that there are people that don't choose to be IT professionals. There are people that don't choose to be white-collar professionals. There are people that like the job they do. My son's a plumber. My son went through high school, didn't want to go to post-secondary. He went and got a job at a plumbing company. Today he's a journeyman plumber. And you know what? That to me speaks to, there's a lot of people out there, but there are a lot of people like that are getting left behind. We need to have jobs for everyone in this city.
Right.
We don't need to have jobs for some people. Everyone deserves an opportunity to work in this city that wants to work.
And we have the economy that allows us to diversify. I mean, when you think about it, we have the food processing industry, the manufacturing industry. We're strong in research and medicine. We're strong in the digital economy. We're strong in even tourism and hospitality. And we have to embrace all of those sectors, and we have to have strategies around all those sectors, because to your point, it can't all be about high tech. I think high tech is an extremely important and huge opportunity market for us. But I also think you're right. I mean, I don't want to call it low skill, because it's not low skill. It's just a different skill. It's manual skill. It's getting your hands dirty, and it's making a contribution to the community, making a contribution to the local economy. But there is a desire to make the community better. There's a desire to want to do something better for all of us, not just ourselves. And I think that's why people like you and I and others are going to step forward in this case, and I'm hoping more business people come forward, because I really believe they bring that element of fiscal responsibility, but an element of social sensitivity. And I think those are opportunities that we as a group can start to reshape our community and make it very, very valuable and prosperous for everybody.
Agreed. This is my home. This has always been my home. I'm proud to call London home, but I want other people to be proud to call this home. And I think calling it home is having that opportunity, and I think opportunity is a huge thing. It is incredibly difficult for a parent to make a decision that they cannot support their family and need to go to a food bank. I think that puts a lot of pressure on people. I think people struggle to recognize how difficult that is. When you look at the pressures, for instance, that are on our food bank right now, we need to do something. We need to do better. We need to do better. I think at City Hall we need to do better. I think we need to focus in on the things that really matter to Londoners. I think we need to focus in on the things that can change people's lives. And I think there are soft sells on change people's lives, but then there's the hard work. And I think we're falling a little short on the hard work. I think the hard work is, let's get people back together. Let's create jobs. Let's move forward. And we need that environment. You know what? We talk about it all the time, and I think through every single election you hear the same thing. City Hall is open for business. My thing is, and my belief has always been, when you're open for business, you never have to tell somebody. They know.
You know, it's funny, you mentioned focus, and I really want us to focus on the economy, because I really want to create those enablers for people to get jobs and start to live their dreams, and actually to self-fulfill. I really want to focus some time on the vulnerable and finding them housing and getting them in a place where they can feel safe and secure and enabled, and then start to get the help they need, whether it's through drug addiction, homelessness, poverty, as you mentioned, or the mental health issues. And then I want to focus on mobility, and not just mobility inside the city, because that has been consuming all of our conversations for so long in this city. It's really a shame. It's a lost opportunity in my mind. But I also want to focus on mobility outside the city and connect capital and talent and an ability to reach family and friends and celebrate life, and have people be able to come into our community and see it as a capital for Southwestern Ontario. But the thing you mentioned about focus is that I think more than anything is this particular council has meandered in several places. And I think it's well-intentioned, but I'm not entirely sure it's been very effective. And you know, you think about all of the long-winded debates that have gone on and the amount of exhaustive conversations that have happened. And I think that's come at a consequence to the community, because as they are debating internally about the symbolism of, say, sanctuary cities, or about the international plowing match repeatedly, or about vending machines and whether we should have candy in them. I mean, these were elongated debates that really shouldn't be part of a core council agenda. They should be part of a quick decision and move on, so that you can get to the true items that matter to Londoners: basic services, economy, caring for those that are hurting, and mobility. I think those are the kind of things I'm talking about. What do you think you're going to be your focus going forward?
I think the same thing. I think to me, economy is first and foremost. I think you have to deal with the social issue. But I'm a very big believer that when your economy is strong, it is much easier for a city to deal with the social issues that they have in front of them. And I think in some ways, some of those social issues tend to lessen because your economy is strong. So I think first and foremost we have to focus on an economy. For me, downtown, and I say it to people, I joke with people, I'll live and die on downtown. To me, downtown is a microcosm of your city. To me, to discount your downtown, in a lot of ways you tend to discount your city. I think this is the starting engine. This is where we move out from. When you look at, I think when you look at people, I think we need to come together. I think, as you say, mobility is something that's polarized us. I think we've seen the damage that it's done, and I think at a time when we needed to come together as a community. Do I think we could have solved the issues about BRT if we had worked a little closely together? I don't think we could have solved them, but maybe we wouldn't be where we are today. We might have at least been able to sit down with clear heads and say, you know what, this just maybe isn't working for us at the end of the day. My concern with BRT is we've gone past that point. We've gone to a point of no return with BRT, and that point of no return is it doesn't really matter what comes back. We've backed it to this. Now our backs are to the wall. We've got nowhere else.
Well, and that's the frustration. I mean, it's almost become an ideology. It's almost become like zealots on one side of the issue or the other. And what I'm looking at is the price point. And I'm looking at the cost of this system, which continues to escalate. So a new report just came out now. So we're now at $500 million in capital, and an unclear amount on operating, and an unclear amount on all of the feeder systems, and an unclear amount on the utilities. And so yet again, we're going to be in a much higher price point than we were 3-4 months ago. And 3-4 months from now, we're going to be at a higher price point still. And yet we keep pushing this forward. And I just don't get it. I do not understand why people have decided that they want to die on this issue. It's not a constructive conversation by any stretch of the imagination. It's a huge cost to the consumer. It's a huge cost to the taxpayer and huge risk to our future. I do not understand why people have decided that they want to die on this hill. But I mean, I'm going to respect it. I think it's going to be a huge consequence to them come the election. But I want to get us off the debate as quickly as possible. So I'm putting a plan out there, John, and I'm going to finish this thing. It's not going to be particularly sexy. It's measured, but it's responsible. It gets people moving around and respects all parts of the city. And then after that, we're going to move on to other things because, again, it's back to the focus. The focus is lost by virtue of this debate. And the focus is off the economy, it's off our most vulnerable, and it's off some of the things that we need to be doing to position us very favorably over the next 15 to 20 years.
And I think when I talk to people downtown, one of the things that I hear on a regular basis on that is that to say to people who are taking transit now, who have to take transit, who need to take transit, that we're going to hold up a tinfoil ball and shine it 12 or 13 years down the road and say, don't worry, this is what you're going to get. This is what you should be looking forward to. These people need changes now. They deserve changes now. They deserve a better transit system in London. I go back to Kitchener. When you talk to people in Kitchener, one of the things that they will tell you, and my nephew went to school there, loved the transit system. Transit system is the best transit system I have ever been on. That's not what people say about our transit system in London. Our transit system doesn't get a lot of respect from the users that are using it right now. We need to fix things on our transit system now. Some of those dollars have to go in to address our current situation. Work out from there, but I just feel that people that are using it now on a regular basis deserve something better.
I agree. Let me ask you this, and maybe we can kind of wrap up at this point. So let's picture 4 years from now, because you can only influence the ledger so much over such a short period of time. What would you like to see 4 years from now? We're sitting here having a beer. You're drinking craft beer. I'm going to be probably still drinking Labatt. You know, I'm going with the 100-year-old company. What do you see as the 4 years from now is what you would like to see as our crowning achievements if you got a chance to play a role on council?
If I have a chance to play a role for council, I'd like to see a stronger economy. I'd like to see a more diverse economy in the city. I'd like to see growth in the downtown, which I think we have an opportunity to. When I look at Soho, I think Soho is a community that's just dying to see those lands developed and a plan go in place there. But for me, I look at our city right now, I look at our neighborhoods right now. I know you talked to Sean last week. I look at the opportunity to be able to, when I come out of downtown, to go to someplace like Argyle. Go, enjoy the time, sit down, have a beer with my friend. But to me, we need to be able to look at our economy, and we need to be able to look at the residents. We need to be able to look at the people here in the face and them say, you know what, I'm proud. I'm proud to be a Londoner. And you know what, right now we're struggling, I think, a little bit with that. We need to bring that civic pride back, and I think we can.
You know, I think our citizens are very worthy of a better city. I believe that they are worthy of a city. I believe that there is a city to be had, that people can feel proud, that they're proud to call a hometown, that they're proud to tell their friends that they're from. And we haven't had that for a little bit of time now. There's been this economic and social malaise. And I think we have a responsibility as business leaders to now step forward and see if we can make a contribution to fix that. I believe I can make a contribution to that. But the biggest thing I think at the end of 4 years is I'd like to people to say, I'm really proud of what we accomplished, not as a council, but as a community. Yeah. And that we feel good about what we do. And we have a standing. We've returned our standing, a national presence, a pride that makes people say that, you know, London is my home and I'm proud to be here.